Roger just put all his haki into defeating Dami Reverse Rocks alongside Garp. Only difference is it was Roger's idea, showing the potential of how creative he can get with haki. Which is no surprise, as we learn Garp trained without haki, punching those battleship bags. We know Garp is more focused on physical strength, the raw power within. And then we also have evidence with Kaido stating Roger became Pirate King because haki transcends all. Though he was so excited he got a Devil Fruit on God Valley, and even before that said he was jealous of Whitebeard's Devil Fruit power. But this says all you need to know about how strong Roger's haki is. Even a Devil Fruit hungry, happy Kaido had to admit that haki through Roger confirmed is how you reign in this grand line. This is also all you have to know when it comes to how strong Roger's haki became after God Valley, surpassing even Base Rocks, who I looked at as the strongest pirate on the God Valley Island. So today I do a deep dive on the Haki Man, and no, I'm not talking about red hair Shanks, the one who taught Shanks everything he knows. Yeah, that's right, the true Haki Man, Gold D Roger. Now before I do this deep dive, many people want me to speak on Mihawk and Shanks discourse when it comes to, of course, the sword scale haki debate. And yes, I will say this, I believe Whitebeard on God Valley was stronger than Mihawk, and some might say, okay, Whitebeard has the most powerful paramecium and doesn't just fight with a sword. Well, the thing is, I had 3 men above Whitebeard, and 2 of those men used swords. It was Rocks with his crushing sword style and Roger with his 2-hand sword style. And these guys are Conqueror's haki coding experts, and it was disgusting how much Conqueror's haki they were using. So when Brand New says Mihawk has greater sword skill than even Shanks, I agree. I think he has better sword skill, but it doesn't necessarily change my opinion when it comes to the haki sword skill debate, and that's why I'm doing this deep dive on the Haki Man Roger. But I must say, there is evidence that Shanks probably was stronger with 2 hands, because you see how Roger's fighting on God Valley. He has 2 hands on his 1 sword. If Shanks fought similar, makes sense why Mihawk doesn't want to fight Shanks, knowing his whole entire fighting style has changed because he only has 1 arm. But back to the main purpose of the video, we talk about the Haki Man Gold D Roger, and his first attack ever named was Divine Departure, one of the most insane attacks in the One Piece story. And he used it on Kozuki Yoden, surprisingly, probably the strongest swordsman in the world at the time. Now, some people say, wait, Kozuki Yoden is the strongest swordsman in the world? Well, he was a samurai from Wano, and Roger himself was like so hyped to see him. And Kozuki Yoden had so much amazing sword skill, and yeah, Roger said, yeah, Divine Departure, Kankazaki coding, you're done. And Oden watching Roger and Whitebeard fight pretty much confirmed that haki transcends all, what Kaido was saying. So definitely gotta say it is Divine Departure from Roger, and this is a stronger Roger than the God Valley Roger. It just really was hype seeing how far Oden got sent flying. Oden is not a weakling, guys. He's incredibly powerful. So this was an insane feat by Roger, in my opinion. Just look how strong this feat was, is the fact that Red Hair Shanks, Roger's apprentice, used Divine Departure on Eustace Kid and nearly killed him, and knocked out his vice captain who tried to help him last minute as well. Now this is Killer, who did well in Wano, and Kid did splendidly well too as well with his awakening. Now of course this just shows how strong Divine Departure is, and if Shanks is doing that much damage, imagine how much Roger's damage he can do. Now of course I will say Kozuki Yoden is stronger than Kid, so of course Kozuki Yoden could get back up, unlike Kid who just got destroyed. But I do gotta say, Kid was taking a lot of Kankazaki coded attacks from Big Mom, and he did fight by Big Mom and Kaido. Like, Kid is not a scrub when it comes to durability, so definitely just shows you how devastating this power is, and there's a reason why Oden was bleeding and really damaged from his attack, even though Roger didn't knock him out like Shanks knocked out Kid. But still, it just shows you how Divine Departure is an insane move. And steering away from Roger again, Joy Boy's haki on Egghead Island was insane. The fact that Dorian Broggy compared it to Red Hair Shanks' haki, and we know Red Hair Shanks doesn't have as strong as haki as Roger, is a Roger upscale, guys. So Roger has upscale when it comes to his haki, and if anything, he probably has the closest haki to the first Pirate Joy Boy. I think Rocks has the closest haki to Davy D. Jones, but when it comes to haki with Joy Boy, I think Roger is the one who is closest haki to Joy Boy. And maybe if Rocks was able to survive after God Valley, he could have probably got stronger haki than Davy D. Jones, maybe, and Joy Boy. Not stronger, but more so comparable to them, maybe comparable to Joy Boy, but I think Roger's the only one who actually had comparable haki to Joy Boy. The reason why Kaido hyped up his haki in Wano. And let's look at his wings. Silver's Rayleigh was the one who taught Monkey D. Luffy the basics of haki. Yes, Armor Haki, Observation Haki, and Conqueror's Haki. That is pretty much a big deal when, of course, the future Pirate King is taught the basic of hakis from the Pirate King's vice captain. Now, mind you, Roger, Rayleigh, and Gabon never used Delphros. It was all haki. So this was a haki expert crew. And I'm telling you guys right now, the vice captain, who's not as strong as Roger, is doing this, teaching Luffy. Imagine what Roger could have taught Luffy with his extraordinary knowledge of haki, which we just recently seen when he's talking about the mask, guys. That was cool to see, guys. And then, of course, this is the showman of Rayleigh, knowing that he went up against an Admiral and Kizaru in his prime, but then post-time skip, he has Conqueror's Haki leaking off his sword, and he's willing to fight Blackbeard, even though he admits Blackbeard's stronger, showing that Rayleigh's Conqueror's Haki has weakened, but still, he still can use Conqueror's Haki coding where he can fight a Yonko. That is a big deal, guys, showing that, yeah, Roger's Haki has to be insane if his older wings in their old age are doing this much damage. Just look at Gabon versus Summers. Gabon is fighting a Holy Knight in Summers who has immortality, and Gabon is using Conqueror's Haki coding to gravely damage him. That's a big deal. And then you also have to remember this, guys. Gabon is not the vice captain or the captain. So imagine how strong the captain is in Haki. That's what I'm telling you guys. The wings really made Roger look good. And then Gabon is in the underworld telling Luffy, be mindful how you use Conqueror's Haki, inspiring Loki when it comes to, oh, okay, so this is what that is. I never could put into words, but now that Gabon inspired him, he can actually put into words the Conqueror's Haki coding needed to fight these Holy Knights. And then, of course, lecturing Zoro about his Conqueror's Haki. Zoro didn't even know he had it. So, yeah, if your third guy is saying this, your captain should be incredibly powerful in Conqueror's Haki. Gabon and Rayleigh are living examples of Roger's epicness. Now, I must admit, Roger and Whitebeard did have probably the most insane Conqueror's Haki coded clash I have ever seen in One Piece when it comes to equally men clashing. And we've seen some insane clashes like Shanks and Whitebeard in his old age, or we've seen Big Mom and Kaido splitting the skies as well. Doflamingo and Luffy was pretty cool, but it's not like Big Mom or Kaido or Shanks or Whitebeard. But then, of course, when we get to Wano, we see, of course, Luffy and Kaido also having some insane Conqueror's Haki coded clashes, which were pretty cool to see. But no, I'm telling you guys right now, Roger and Whitebeard, it devastated the island, and the skies are splitting, but it was an insane amount of Conqueror's Haki coded clash in here. World's Strongest Man versus the Pirate King in their prime, guys, not God Valley. This is their prime. I also want to talk about how Roger 32 years ago in the current story had Rampaging Spirit, the second named attack we've ever seen him use, a Conqueror's Haki coded slash he did to Monkey D. Garp, the world's strongest marine, who hit him with, of course, a meteor fist. This was, in my opinion, a really cool thing to see how Roger and Garp, it was their era. The narrator said it, and they're using Conqueror's Haki coded casually against each other and tanking the attacks. Yo, these guys are insanely powerful. I also want to say during God Valley, Rox and Roger did both acknowledge Garp's Conqueror's Haki when he was entering the island. Now, this is to say that, of course, Garp is on the same level as Roger and Rox, but I also want to say the fact that they both acknowledge it shows how strong their haki is as well. The fact that they're noticing Garp's insane haki. This is the willpower of all these men. I also want to talk about how when Garp attacked Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido, the future Yonko, they all ran away. Now, mind you, Whitebeard said he didn't want to fight Garp because the fight would drag along. Of course, Big Mom did an attack, and Kaido, of course, was kind of pissed off. Like, why don't we just fight back? When Big Mom attacked, though, her named attack, Garp pretty much roasted her, saying it can do nothing to her, showing that Garp has a history with Big Mom. He called her Linlin, for goodness sake. He knows Big Mom isn't on his level. But this just shows how built different Roger was, because years earlier, Roger saw Garp ship and he's like, yo, I want the smoke. But these three guys did not want the smoke. Now, of course, context matters and everything, but still, Oda making these panels happen is for intentions, guys. Now, to defend Whitebeard a bit, he does eventually clash with Roger, even though he ran from Garp. And they have a pretty insane Haki clash, Conqueror's Haki coding. Not on the same level as we've seen when they're in their prime, but it still was pretty cool to see. And of course, 12 years later, they're going to be way stronger. But still, I thought it was cool, the destructive capability of them. You see a huge explosion from their Conqueror's Haki clash. It was nice to see. It wasn't like they were going all out, but it was cool to see Roger and Whitebeard still have that rivalry. It's not like Roger was only trying to fight Rox. You know, he still respected Whitebeard's power and ability too as well. Now I want to talk about how Roger, Rox, and Garp all noticed Imu's disgusting haki. Imu is the top one in the verse, and Roger said it's not the time for the Rox pirates right now after feeling Imu's haki, showing you the difference between Rox's power and Imu's power. Roger was also the most excited out of the three, Garp, Roger, and Rox. Yes, Rox was like, okay, the world's in front of me, I'm ready, I'm hyped, and Garp was kind of like confused, but Roger was excited, like, yo, a new new adventure. This is why I think Roger had so much potential in his Haki compared to Garp and Rocks. I think Garp and Rocks reached the top level of Conqueror's Haki, but Roger, his potential was higher because he was always excited to reach new levels, and you can see it here in this moment when Immu arrives on the island, transforming into Saturn. That was an insane moment. I also want to talk about how Roger ignores the Big Eater attack by Captain John using Cusa's Kid's Devil Fruit ability. Yes, the Magna Fruit, where Gavon actually couldn't ignore it and had to grab onto his axes. Now, Gavon is a Conqueror's Haki coding user just like Roger, but it shows that Oda's trying to differentiate the gap between Hakis and Gavon and Roger. Yes, Gavon's a top tier Haki user, doesn't have a Devil Fruit, same as Rayleigh, but Roger is built different, and this is what I gotta tell you guys. Same way that Sanji and Zoro are incredibly powerful, but Luffy's built different. There's a gap between Captain and his wings. I also want to talk about how Roger does his Divine Departure again for the second time, and he combines it with, of course, Rox's Cursed Abyss, an insanely powerful attack by Rox, might I add. Galaxy Impact, we already seen Galaxy Impact and how strong it was when he went on Pirate Island, and of Shattering Void, the first ever Whitebeard named attack, which with his combined with his Devil Fruit and Conqueror's Haki coding, so that's incredibly powerful. Ikkaku Sovereignty, of course, Big Mom combining her Devil Fruit and her Napoleon sword with Conqueror's Haki coding was cool to see as well. There's an insane amount of Conqueror's Haki in this 6-man combo they did. Of course, Kaido wasn't there yet, he was just too young, but still, and it didn't work. And this is the key I want to talk about. The fact that they did all this Conqueror's Haki combined attack on one guy and it didn't work. You think Roger, like the guy who was shocked of that their attack wasn't working, you think he wasn't going to develop his Conqueror's Haki to another insane level when he noticed that it wasn't working against Immu? Roger is super creative with Haki. We've seen that when he talked to Mask, guys. So expect some cool stuff after God Valley from Roger. I also want to talk about how Rox, after he became Dami Reverse, a demon, he pretty much low diffs Kaido, and then he knees Big Mom, and then of course he clashes with Whitebeard, but later overpowers Whitebeard and sends him to the mountain that destroys one of the God Valley mountains. This is Dami Reverse Rox. He's super amped up, and the reason I want to talk about it is because this is what Roger was going up against. Yes, he was getting help from Garp. It was a 2v1, but still, Roger's still facing one of the most strongest characters we've seen in the entire series, where he's doing this to 3 future Yonko. I also found it super cool how we're talking about the Haki man Roger, and Roger and Garp use a Haki blast to bring Rox in front of them, which shocks even Immu. Immu's like, Davey, like you're going against the mission of destroying everybody, by getting, of course, excited about this fight with Roger and Garp. Now, of course, Rox would use the Voice of All Things and tell them to kill him. And the fact that all 3 of them are using Voice of All Things shows you how strong their Haki is, which you already know, guys. But I thought it was pretty cool that Rox was summoned by Roger's Haki. Garp's as well, but Roger, I'm focusing on Roger for this video, guys. Now, let's actually talk about the choreography of the fight. I think the choreography of the fight was highlighting Roger's Conqueror's Haki, just like it was highlighting Garp's, but I want to talk about Roger's more so in this video. Roger, of course, is coding his attacks in Conqueror's Haki, and he blocks Rox's attack and has to clash with him. This is more impressive than Whitebeard to me, because Whitebeard blocks it with his Devil Fruit and his Conqueror's Haki coding. But Rox, of course, is amped up, and he, of course, amps up his Haki to send both Garp and Roger out the way, like Whitebeard got sent to the mountain. And, of course, Rox's Haki then, of course, splits the skies, like Luffy did in Wano, though it was kind of in contention because the manga and anime is a little bit unclear. And then, of course, Joy Boy did as well in Agate Island. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because Rox is using more Haki against Roger and Garp than he was using against Whitebeard during the Whitebeard sending him to the mountain, showing that Roger is going up against a stronger Rox than when Whitebeard is going against. And Roger is doing relatively well. Even though he gets help from Garp, he's doing relatively well, guys. I'm going to give respect to Roger there. Now, we would later see Roger send Rox flying into the rocks with his 2-hand sword style, such force that Roger has. And then, of course, after this, he jumps from the top ropes with an attack, the same style, fighting style he's been doing with the 2 hands on the sword, and even tells Rox to wake up. This is obvious in tandem with Garp's attack, but I also want to mention how he is not trying to kill Rox here, but more so wake him up. This is a big deal because Rox is telling him to kill him. So Roger technically has a nerf in here. It's not a big nerf, but there is a mental nerf that people like love to talk about since Agate Island. People love talking about Aokiji and Kizaru and like all the nerfs there and whatnot, but I gotta mention it here. But of course, when it comes to 1v1, Rox is definitely gonna overpower both Garp and Roger. He's just stronger than them, and their fight broke the other mountain as Haki is just shooting everywhere. Even Shaki commented on it. She's from Amazon Lily, a Haki Island, guys, might I add, and she comments on how immense the Haki is coming from this fight. Now, the main reason why I made this video, you guys all know, is because Roger talking about the mass. Yes, the mass. Them putting their Conqueror's Haki into the mass. And he even talks about how his armor haki and his Conqueror's Haki coding as well is not working. The same thing that Kado mentioned when fighting Gear 5 Luffy is how he was in awe of Luffy's insane Delphoid, but also his armor haki coded and his Conqueror's Haki coded as well. And then of course Garp confirms Rox is guarding himself with Conqueror's Haki coding, canceling out their attacks. And Roger says exactly, saying, let's put all our Conqueror's Haki into the mass, into our next attack. Pretty much Roger's telling Garp is, we can go all in with these Conqueror's Haki clashes, but we should just go all in one attack and see what happens. Roger knows how strong Rox is and knows that he cannot beat him in a battle of attrition, guys. Roger, in knowledge of Conqueror's Haki, is insane. He's not really saying the actual like terminology and whatnot like Garp is. Garp is more so fact-based, but Roger knows what he's talking about it, and the way he explained it even better than Garp in my opinion. That's where we'll see Roger's strongest attack we've ever seen in the story. Kagutsuchi, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but they said it's called the God of Fire. It's an insane attack. Ace, of course his sword name is Ace, his son is Ace, and he's spinning his swords with all his Conqueror's Haki combined with Garp's Conqueror's Haki as well with his infinite explosion. And pretty much you see him covering his face too as well as he's going through it, seeing Rox in such a state. And then they of course defeat Dami Reverse Rox, the strongest character after Imu. Now people might say it was a 2v1, but this 2v1 is a little different than Kin and Law's 2v1 versus Big Mom. Kin and Law were doing awakening Delphoid attacks, and they still didn't technically defeat Big Mom. There was an explosion that helped out the win for them. But this was all Conqueror's Haki from Garp and Roger, and that's why I give a little more respect to this 2v1. Plus, Rox is amped up by Dami Reverse. He's bigger. Big Mom comments on this, and his Haki definitely gets amped up. Everything gets amped up. So you got to give respect in the sense of Roger and Garp did take out the second strongest character we've seen in the story so far after Imu. And they definitely get Haki blooming moments after God Valley. So they definitely, in my mind, are stronger than what we see in God Valley, 100%. I personally believe after God Valley, I think Roger's Haki is the closest to reach to Imu's level. It might even reach Imu's level. And during his death, I'm talking about his death where he started the Great Pirate Era, I believe the biggest difference is Luffy, of course, has the Delphoid, the Nika Delphoid, one of the two legendary Delphoids that Rox mentioned. Of course, Loki has the other one. Those are very important when confronting Imu. Haki transcends all, but at the end of the day, some legendary Delphoids needed to be clashed into Imu's legendary Delphoid. Now, of course, I will say this. The fact that I'm saying Roger's Haki will reach Imu's level, he's a true Haki man. Roger, I am not surprised that he's channeling his Haki, this much Haki into his weapon. We know how difficult it is to do that, guys. So I always give respect to Roger. He's a swordsman and he has insane Conqueror's Haki, voice of all things. I truly believe Roger is the strongest Haki user we've seen since Joy Boy. I do think that, and I think if you argue with me, you will lose that argument. Now, of course, people say, what about Imu? Imu, there's a little bit more hacks to him. I think Imu has insane Conqueror's Haki. I think Imu and Roger are on the same level when it comes to the top of the top of the top tier Conqueror's Haki, but Roger, what I was seeing in God Valley, his potential is endless. Even Garp's potential is endless as well. I'll make a whole separate video on Garp as well, but yeah, put some respect on the Haki man, the true Haki man, Roger's name.